You're listening to Lords of Thunder podcast with Alpha Omega Sin and Happy Console Gamer.
So welcome back to another episode of the Lords of Thunder podcast. I am one of your hosts, Johnny Millennium, and I am joined with the Alpha, the Sin, and the Omega. Alpha Omega Sin.
He's an alright guy. He's okay. He's got a nice ass. I had that said to me recently at the gym, and I didn't know how to respond. I was like, "Thank you." Yes.
Wait, who was it by? Was it by an old man? Was it a?
Oh no, it was actually by a chick. She had complimented me on my arms at one point, then later on said I had a nice ass, and I was like, "Thanks." My girlfriend's right the fuck over there. Thank you. I'm going to
go. Not a creepy old man, so you take it where you can get it.
Oh well, no, that's because I wasn't hopping into the shower area. If it was, I'm like, oh hey there, do you mind if I soap you up? And be like, yes sir, I do kind of mind. And he's just like, oh, you can soap me up anytime. Just spit on it a little.
You know, I'll be honest with you. When I was in high school, when I was in like grade 8, and I had to go to gym for the first time. I'm like, and everybody's getting changed. And I'm like, why is everybody getting fucking naked? I was like so fucking disturbed. I was like, up to that point, I had never been with a bunch of naked guys. And it was nothing I ever aspired to. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I remember like feeling so fucking uncomfortable that very first day. I'm like, oh my God. So I just started getting changed ahead of time. You know what I mean? I'd show up in shorts. Hey, I'm ready to go,
dude.
So I didn't even have to go into the change room. I never felt comfortable. And there's guys in there showering. Like I just never got with that.
Dude, I can completely fucking relate to that shit. Because the first time in middle school, they were like, all right, well, you get changed in here. I was like, wait, what? Normally, we just showed up to gym and just did our fucking thing. They're like, nope, you get changed here. Oh, and it's swimming class. So guess what? You got to wear this tight little Speedo. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm fucking done, dude. I'm not going and putting my fucking ham hock inside that blue Speedo and jumping around in the fucking pool while some creepy ass fucking phys ed coach guy is just in there staring me down. Nah, I'm good. So I skipped physical education for the entire rest of the year, and then when I got in trouble, I had my mom write me up a bullshit excuse saying, yeah, he's allergic to whatever the fuck that material is, so you can't fail him. Fuck you. And that was pretty much it.
I swear to God, that's the kind of gym class where they're like, okay, you're in your little outfits. Now you got to go climb rope for 5 hours.
Dude, I would have been okay with climbing rope and shit. It's just going around and doing half the shit they were asking. I was like, man, this stuff is fucking weak. I'm done. See ya. And then just run around the school and like go to the cafeteria and steal all the fucking pizzas in there and eat them and shit like I'm some kind of stoned out Ninja Turtle.
Okay, I'm a little bit out of high school. So in high school, is there still change rooms? Is there still all of that going on? Probably.
I'd imagine so. I can't think that they'd get rid of it. But you know what? Now I think about it, most people are like, the Lords of Thunder podcast is just talking about getting naked. So you know, here. So the entire point to this episode, we're going to talk about gaming and relationships.
Yeah, and Speedos.
Yeah,
no.
And if you want to go and stuff your ham hock into a little blue Speedo and jump around in front of a perverted gym coach, this is the podcast where you will hear such things.
Oh my God. It's so funny that we started off in we could just keep on going and just talk about whatever, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
But you're right. We have a theme, and that's relationships and video gaming. And what we thought we'd do is talk about our relationships now and gaming, and what and some of our earlier ones, what they used to be like in high school and all during that. So, like, I guess start off like you're with a young lady now, and you guys game together. Like, how did that all turn out? You know,
well, let's see. Me and my girlfriend have been together for about 7 years now. So it's been a while. And it wasn't one of those relationships where it was like, I play video games and I'm trying to get her into them as well. She actually was like playing games the entire fucking time that she was alive. And it was kind of cool because the first time I met her, she was wearing a Dead Rising shirt, which I ended up taking from her and wearing, and then I lost it, which made me unhappy. But anyway, so it's kind of cool because it's somebody who's into like survival horror games, and right now she's playing through Fallout because she wants to get all revved up for the new Fallout 4 that's coming out, which everybody should be. And yeah, like in my game room, I've got a great big gargantuan TV that can crush a small little Indian village and shit. And then I've got the little 3D PlayStation television that's like sitting off to the side. And all my systems are hooked up to both of these things at the same time. So we sit there and play video games like side by side all the time, and it's cool as fuck because she's introduced me to some things in gaming. I've introduced her to fucking way more, but it's kind of neat because there's like a mutual interest in gaming amongst the two of us that was always there from the time that we met. It just so happened to be one of those things of, hey, we got another thing in common. That's fucking badass. So I dig that.
What got her into gaming?
Well, back in the day, her first system was the PS1, so she didn't get to grow up on any of the older systems like you and me did. And she got to play the PlayStation 1 as her first system ever, and she had gotten things like Bloody Roar, Ace Combat, Twisted Metal, Silent Hill, like a bunch of games like that, Road Rash. She got started off on all those, and then as time progressed, got more and more games, and then with the advent of the next generation after that, PlayStation 2, just started playing even more games similar in genre. And her brother also is a big avid gamer, and they're like best friends. So they would also play games together. So you had two people in the household that would play them, and then her dad and mom also play games. Like her mom, who was one of the biggest Tomb Raider fans in the entire world, she would play every single one of them, and it was like a family thing, like a bonding thing. So it was an entire family who was like interested in playing video games together. Just so happened, the kids obviously took much more to it than the parents did. But, they play PC games, like, her mom also liked Diablo, which got my girlfriend into Diablo, and RPGs and a bunch of other stuff. And it was just, it's kind of cool that that's how it happened, because it was kind of similar for me as well. So both of our households were, kind of along the same wavelength of how they were going to treat the entertainment experience.
Here's an interesting question. Was it the gaming that attracted you guys, or was it just that you liked the person and they happened to be a gamer on top of that? Yeah.
It was actually the latter of the two, because, a lot of times, as I was growing up, man, I swore up and down I didn't want to date chicks that weren't into metal and didn't like horror movies and weren't like the big-tittied fucking goth chicks that I always pined after, because that's all I went after, and that's all I dated the entire time. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to just be completely open. Like, I wanted somebody that had more of, like, the same, like, moral mentality that I had and cared about the same kind of shit I did. If they weren't into games or weren't into horror movies or weren't into metal, I wasn't going to make that a make or break situation. It just so happened, yeah, she does like games, and just so happened to like a lot of the same games as me. So if anything, that was like the big fucking cherry on top of the cake. So it was kind of cool. It worked out like that. But was it, how was it for you and your marriage?
Well, yeah, for me, it's interesting that you say that, and I think we fully agree on this, is that I, in my life, have never looked for girls who were into video games, or if they were into anime, or anything. Those are not things. I didn't go to anime conventions and go, geez, is there a girl into anime here? I looked for people that I was compatible with, that had good, exactly what you said, good moral values, like compatible pasts, you know what I mean? Good, like you had similar backgrounds and could relate to each other. So when I met Kim, when I met her, she did not like science fiction movies. She did not like, she wasn't a big gamer. I remember saying to her when we first were hanging out, I said, oh, do you ever play any video games? She's like, Well, I played like some Diddy Kong racing with my dad back in the day, and I played Fable, and I was like, oh, this is not looking good. you know, not bashing Fable at all, but I was like, oh, that's kind of it. But the thing is, and I'll say this to anybody else out there, if you're looking for somebody, as what we just talked about, find somebody you're mutually compatible with as a human being. Don't look for a gamer. Don't look for an anime girl or whatever, like just a geeky girl or something. Find somebody you're compatible with, and honestly, everything else will fall into place. Like with Kim, I didn't have to force her into video games. I didn't have to try. She was laid in bed one night, and I said, "Hey, here's Dragon Quest IX. You may like it." And I put it in her hands, and I left the room. And then I came back, and she's like, "Oh, what do I do? She's like, I'm fighting monsters." I'm like, "You can go back in town and upgrade equipment and stuff like that." And I left, and she wasn't saying. I kept peeking in every once in a while, and she's still playing it. I'm like, "Oh, okay, she's still into it."
And so the addiction begins. You are the drug peddler, Johnny, the drug peddler millennium.
You know what? It was the first one's free. And so the funny thing, I came in, and you're right. There was a moment. It's just like a heroin addict the first time going, "Hey, I'm getting kind of high. I like this." Kim said to me, she goes, "Wow." She's like, "I just went to town, upgraded all my equipment, and now I'm out, and I'm fighting even harder monsters. I'm getting even further." And she's like, "I totally fucking love this." And to be absolutely honest, I really say this because there's a lot of people that play video games in their lives, and it's a passing hobby, and they're like, "Okay, that was cool," and they move on. But for people like me and yourself, there's a moment that it hit us, and we were like, "Oh, I'm into this. I'm not like a little bit into this. I am into this." And that's what happened to Kim at that moment. It just triggered. And now it's so funny. And now I bought her Fantasy Life by level 5. I got her that for Christmas. She's 160 fucking hours into that on the 3DS. As I'm playing Metal Gear or something on the couch, she's just playing 3DS all the fucking time. That's her main system to go to. She plays a lot of, she played obviously Dragon Quest 8 on the PS2 and Final Fantasy 9 on the PS1. But yeah, I made a gamer out of her, but I wasn't trying to. If she didn't like games, that would have been okay. Maybe it wouldn't have been acceptable in the long run, but it's just the way it worked out.
Well, I mean, that's actually something that's kind of cool, and most people should always keep in mind of is if you're dating somebody or marrying somebody or whatever that has an open mind and actually cares about you and cares about your interests, it's a lot easier to ease them into some of the stuff because they can see why you find something so cool and so interesting. Because a lot of times, most relationships, you start mimicking each other's habits and likes and dislikes, and that's something that happens. It's just normal. So if I'm sitting there, for example, like I've had ex-girlfriends who had no interest in gaming. And then once we had dated for a little bit, all of a sudden they're picking up games on their own and playing them. And I didn't have to sit there and, push it on them. They just started getting into it on their own, or they'd come to me and be like, "Hey, what should I play next?" I'm like, Fatal Frame, play that. That's scary as fuck. There's all sorts of ghosts and shit. And I know that you like the paranormal, so you'll fucking love this. And then all of a sudden, there you go, boom. And it's, I think that's actually a little bit cooler of a feeling too.
Absolutely. And so that's where we're at now. It's like, but you know what? It's been an up and down road for me. It really has with dating and girls in video games or not being into video games. I remember where should we even start? Right back at the beginning, I remember going out with my first few girls, and I'd be playing Ys on the Master System. And they would just sit there and with their mouths open going, as they're watching me. And that'd be our relationship. John would play games. They'd sit there and go,
Well, would they, besides looking like open mouth bass, would they ever turn to you and ask? Because, the Ys games are RPGs. They're very deep in narrative. Would they ever turn to you and be like, "Well, who's that character?" Or why do they hate each other?
The
or
problem is we have to go back because we're talking 1988, 88, 89. So a lot of these video games weren't socially acceptable in any capacity. They were some weird thing that guys did in the basement, and I quite literally was in the basement playing that. And also I was about 14ish years old, 14, 15. So the girls they weren't brainiacs. You know, I don't want to sound mean, but they weren't fucking Albert Einstein sitting there next to me. And I don't think I was with them to be with Albert Einstein back then. You know what I mean? That was not why I was with them. They were kind of gomless. Some of the early girls I went out with were really dumb. And they just never got it. And it wasn't so I dated a lot. I dated a lot of girls in high school that never even came close to seeing my video games or anything. I wouldn't even talk to them about it. But when I was 16, I dated this one girl, and I've never talked about this story, which is really unusual. It's that there was a girl in high school, and I swear to God, all my friends would always look at her and go, "Oh my God, she's like the most beautiful girl." She was like 2 years, like I was in grade, Jesus, I was in grade 11. She was in grade 9, grade 10. And I was 17. She was 15 at the time. I think I was 16 when I met her, but she was like the hottest girl in high school. I swear to God, like the girl. I remember one of my friends going, "That's the kind of girl you buy flowers for." And I remember something stupid like that, and I was like, "Oh my God, like that girl is so out of all of our leagues. It's not even funny." And so I was dating this other girl. And me and this other girl had broken up, and at the end, I knew she was friends. See, I was kind of a manipulator. I knew she was friends with this girl, and I said to her when we broke up, I said, "Hey," I said, "you're such a great girl. I want to be able to set you up with any of my friends. Name them. I'll make it happen. I'll try to make it happen for you." And she's like, "Yeah, I'll do the same for you." I knew she'd give me the same back. And she's like, "Is there any of my friends that you'd like to date or anything like that?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "I don't really know many of your friends," which I was a liar. I knew every single one of them. And so she's like, "Well, what about this person? What about this person? What about this person?" And then she named this one girl, and I'm the one that was like, this the hottest. I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, she's kind of interesting." She's like, "Okay." She's like, "I'll phone her up right now." And she hangs up on me. I'm like, "No, don't, no. And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is the most embarrassing thing." And then she phones me back. Like after like 5-10 minutes, and she's like, "Hey, yeah," she's like, "I just talked to her." She's like, "Yeah, she's totally interested in you as well. So I'm gonna give you her number. She wants you to call her." I'm like, "What?" Just like that? And I was in utter shock. Yeah, I was like,
God damn, dude. The hottest chick at your school was basically writing about your dick, and you didn't even know it. In her diary, she was like, "Oh man, I need some of that, Jesus. Stud."
But honestly, I was in shock. I said, "Just like, really? She just wants to go out like that?" And she's like, "Yeah." So I couldn't call. I was so nervous. I really was. I was like, I'm going to fuck this up somehow. And then the girl phones me back. She's like, "Why haven't you phoned her yet? She just phoned me. She doesn't know why you haven't phoned." I'm like, fuck. So I phoned her up. And I'm like, "Hey, so-and-so." And she's like, "Yeah." I said, "Do you want to go out with me?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "Just like that?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." And then we talked for like obviously a long time, for a couple hours on the phone, and she's pretty cool. And so we started having a relationship, and I dated this girl till I was 19. So it was like a pretty long relationship for me. And I got her into anime, into video games, and it was nothing hard. It was like we enjoyed it. So I'd have Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. She was the day it came out, and I trained her every day, and she was one of the best Street Fighter players. We went up to this mall where all the Asian gang members would go, and to this one arcade, and we would go in there. And
wait, hold up. So I'm seeing all this shit in my head as like a badass fucking 80s anime. So you're training her, and I'm imagining like she's under a waterfall meditating and shit. And with like a Super Nintendo controller in hand, and then you're like, "All right, I trained you for this day. Let's go take on the Asian gangs." Like, this shit's fucking epic.
It's true. And hey, Alpha, what was so funny is when I initially started training her, I had Ken, she had Ryu, and what I would do is if you did the little punch, the mouth would move. So I was being funny. I wasn't being serious. I was like, okay, I will train you in the art of Shotokan karate. And I said, so I trained her in like the basics of basics, and we moved up to more complex stuff, and then into zoning, and then into just fighting every day. Me and her played Street Fighter for hours every day for like years. Not for like, we didn't just kind of do it. We had nothing else to do. We didn't have the internet back then. So that was our entertainment. That's what we did. And we didn't even have fucking downloadable movies or anything like that. I mean, it was really medieval times.
So, well, what happened at this, with the whole Asian gangs and...
So she went and she won. She absolutely won. I think they gave her second round. That was a very bad mistake. You know what I mean? Like, she just went, she went in, she lost the first round. They gave her second round, then she just came back and just beat the fuck out of them. Like, and she was really good. And they were like, who is this girl? Like, this is like, I mean, like, okay, you know, like, Married with Children. What was the girl's name on there? Yeah,
Kelly
she
Bundy.
was better than Kelly Bundy. She really was. She was just the hottest girl back then. And yeah, no, so that was so I had a good relationship with her. But after her, I had some bumpy years, man. I could never find a girl that was as compatible with video gaming like I did with her, and to do with anime and stuff like that. It's just one of those things. Your first childhood sweetheart relationship. I knew the relationship couldn't last because, what can I say? It's just, we were too young. I had more dating I wanted to do. I wanted to do in life. I felt, very claustrophobic because it was an early relationship, and she was very jealous back then. So,
well, anytime that you're young and you get into something serious, especially on a level like that, it can be overwhelming.
And neither of us drove, so we just sat in the house all day. We sat in the basement, and I think a lot of younger people can relate to this when you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a vehicle and you're with your significant other and you just hang in the basement, or you hang in the same room every day and you play video games. That's what you do.
Dude, that's you basically just described most of my relationships.
Sorry, that was okay. So that was my big thing in high school. Talk about some of your relationships, dating, and your early years.
Oh man, let's see. The first, I would say, my first actual like relationship that I had that I could even like somewhat kind of compare to yours would have been with Sarah. And Sarah was just this one chick that I had known from my days of going out to the mall, because I was a mall rat. Yeah. And Mallrats 3 is actually being made, which is kind of cool. But yeah, going out there all the time. I mean, I hung out there all the fucking time because it was one of the biggest, areas that everybody as a community could get together and hang out and shit. So I remember seeing her there all the time, and she long blonde hair, really, really big tits, primo goth, into metal.
And mentioned, I love that.
It was, oh dude, the minute that I saw her, my jaw dropped. I was like, holy shit. And turned out that she was into me, and we ended up hooking up the same exact day that we met. And over the course,
I've got, for the audience here, we need to picture this. How old were you?
Let's see, I was 16.
Did you have... Okay, now this is the reason why I brought it up. Did you have a beard at 16?
I did. Not a full beard like I have now, because my beard's it's pretty fucking long now. But I had the mustache. I had a goatee, I guess would be the best way to put it. So I had that, and I still had long hair. And I wore way crazier shit. I used to wear like spiked bracelets and shit, and I had a lot more rings on with fucking pentagrams on them and shit.
Too funny.
And so that was my getup. I'd go out there. Sometimes I'd wear eyeliner because I was so fucking cool.
I never did any eyeliner shit. I because it was they weren't goths when I was younger. They were called mods. That's how old I am. Yeah, well, sorry. Continue on.
Oh yeah, so we hooked up, and we basically the first thing that we ended up connecting on was music, and then she found out that I was really big into games, and she also had video games at her house because her and her brother both had video games and they'd play them every so often. She had like a Super Nintendo and a PlayStation.
Yeah.
So when she started dating me, she started getting more into them. And a lot of times it would be like like one of those pass a controller type things. Like you play through a stage and then they play a stage after that, and you just keep going back and forth because there isn't a technical 2-player mode. So that's how you end up sharing the experience with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was times that she'd watch me play through RPGs, and it was kind of neat because not just her, but a couple of my friends would ask me to put on some of the RPGs I was playing through so they could see what would happen.
Yeah.
Because they had gotten that into the story. And that was one of the reasons why I'd asked you if any of the chicks that you were dating, if they were ever like, oh, hey, who's that character? Oh, who's this? And why are they so angry and swinging swords around and no metaphors for penises? You know, and all that shit, because that's what I ended up getting used to was, oh, hey, will you put on that Lunar game? Those characters are just so fucking cool, and I want to see what's going to happen next. And Galleon was such a badass.
Yeah. Hey,
But-
meanwhile, back in the day, all I go was,
Yeah, you just got the open mouth ass shit.
Lunar,
What's this, Ease? Why are you playing a game called Wise?
Wise,
Why is you playing this? But man, it was a cool feeling though. Whenever, like, because whenever you're younger and you get anybody into something, it just feels like you're triumphant. You know, cue to fucking Final Fantasy victory fanfare music. Like,
you had a connection, right? Like that connection, and like back then, for me, before the internet, it meant everything to find somebody who was into anime or video games. Never mind a woman on top. You know, that's incredible.
Well, you know what was weird? I swear that it was easier for me to get a lot of the chicks I dated into anime than it was for video games.
Yeah. Video games were still the girls that, like, when I was going, like, I was trying to show them Streets of Rage. A lot of girls are like, oh, okay, cool. And they were not into it. Hey, put it this way. I got a story for you about a negative. I remember I must have been 26. And I'd gone together with this one girl one night at the bar, and then we'd hooked up another time, and we're walking down the street, and she says to me, we've been drinking, and she's like, so what are you into? And I'm like, oh, cool, she's interested. I'm like, oh, I'm really into like video games, into anime and art. And she's like, oh, you're into video games? And I'm like, so I'm so funny. So we're walking, and so I'm like, oh, I said, okay. I said, well, what are you into? And she's like, well, I really like making like beads, bead necklaces and stuff. And so I did it in a funny way. I didn't do it in a mean way. I pushed her, like I shoved her. I said, yeah, that's so much better. You know what I mean?
Did she get all defensive?
Oh, probably. I didn't give a fuck. I was so insulted. I was like, fuck off. Do you know why? Because I told you I love my hobby so much that if anybody insults it, I get really annoyed. It's just like, you ignorant fuck. I have that mentality. I don't go, yeah, you're kind of right. It is kind of nerdy. It's like, no, you don't fucking get it. You're the one who's got a problem.
See, and I think that's actually a valuable lesson for everybody, is that while it isn't 100% necessary for you to find somebody that likes all the games and all the anime and all the movies and all the other shit that you like, but if you are passionate about something and you love something a whole bunch, don't just stick with somebody, you know, out of the insecurity of being alone when they're shitting all over something that you like that makes you feel bad about being you.
Yeah, because
Like,
that brings you down. That makes you insecure. That fucks you up. Yeah,
And-
don't let them win on that one. Forget that.
And that's not right whatsoever. Like, a relationship, any worthwhile person that any of you out there are going to be with is not going to tear down all the things that you love, even if they dislike them a whole bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, was there anything more about Sarah then? Like, how long did you guys go out for?
Me, oh man, she was actually my first real relationship. I mean, I dated before her, but I'd never had like a real serious relationship. And I I mean, me and her, the first time we dated was for 3 years, and then we ended up breaking up and then getting back together at another time for like another year.
Yeah.
And it was like, despite the fact that both of us liked games, and I liked them a hell of a lot more, she wouldn't play them as much as me because she wasn't good at them, and I think that's something that deterred her from like going and picking up a controller and want to go and play stuff on her own. Was she just didn't have the patience nor the skill for it, so didn't feel like, you know, it was going to be fun or entertaining. But watching somebody who was good at it and kind of being in the environment for it, she liked that a whole lot more, especially whenever I put on like the scary games and shit, because she liked horror movies and things that were scary and gory and bloody. So all that's fucking fun to watch. Is, oh man, is that person getting impaled over? That's fucking great. Wait, guts? Oh man, it's like a hula skirt, but just fucking entrails. Awesome. So yeah, she'd like that.
It's funny, and you know, getting back to it is like, somebody doesn't have to, as you said, play all the games, but as long as they appreciate your love for it, they don't have to do it every day either. They don't have to be into it. As long as they have an appreciation, and you know what, it goes vice versa for them. You know, if that girl said to me, who was negative, going, "Oh, are you into video games?" Ugh. You know, if she just said, "Oh, that's cool. I don't know a lot about it." And then I'd be like, okay, that's cool. And then I say, "Oh, what are you into?" She's like, "Oh, I'm into making beads." I'm like, you know what? I don't know a lot about that. That's cool. But she started off with a fucking negative. And it's like, no, and you know how long that relationship lasted? A week.
And that's not surprising, because
Yeah.
that's a negative person. That's somebody who wants to push their mindset onto somebody of like, well, I don't like that and I don't agree with that and all this shit. And you know, it is never going to work out well whenever you're just like, oh, that's what you like. Well, that's fucking stupid. Like that's awful reasoning.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't like something, just be respectful of it. I don't know why some people think that, you know, they need to just sit there and crap all over somebody's parade. Oh man, I think that's for fucking losers that sit in their basement and stuff, and whatever stupid cliches they can pull out of their ass and fucking fling into there. But it's, you know, it's whatever. That's
the
how
ups and downs of the years. Yeah, the ups and downs of the years. I've had a lot of really good experiences with women and anime and gaming. And I've had some really negative ones, like that girl. Like, I remember there was another girl that I remember being interested in back in the day. And get this. So we're talking on the phone. We're talking on the phone back and forth, and it's okay. But I can tell that I'm not really compatible with her, and I knew that. But I was kind of into her. I was like, this is still something. And she phoned me up.
Hot?
What's that? Yeah. that's what I meant. Yeah. So,
I had a feeling about it. I was just like, no, she was like smoking hot, just fucking titties for days or some shit.
Yeah. So we were talking, and so I made a video about this a long time ago, about the incident that happened, but I didn't talk about the after effects. Is that my parents had invited some kids over. Well, no, they'd invited some friends of theirs over that brought their kids, and I let them use my PlayStation, and I just told them don't save over anything, and they fucking saved over my Castlevania Symphony of the Night save.
I would have made them eat the fucking PlayStation.
Well, they were fucking gone when I went out for the night, and I came home the next day, and I turned on the PlayStation, and the save was gone. So obviously you can understand, I was irate. I was like a crazy maniac. And I'm freaking out. I'm really pissed off. I calmed down. It's later in the evening, and I'm talking to this girl. And it was the first time I ever kind of opened up about my hobby. I said, "Oh, how you doing?" I said, "I'm fucking annoyed." She's like, "Oh, why are you so annoyed?" I said, "Well, my parents had these kids come over, and they erased this save file for this game I was working on. I'm really annoyed at it." And she's like, "Oh," she's like, "I wouldn't know about that, John." She's like, "I'm not into the video gaming world."
I would have just paused and be like, video gaming world? Like, this isn't a different fucking dimension, idiot.
Yeah, but we're still talking the 90s and earlier 90s. Well, when did Symphony come out? Was that 96, 97?
97.
97. Yeah, so it's still the 90s. It's still, video gaming wasn't what it is now. Where I think now most women are like, yeah, video gaming is part of our popular culture. Like quite honestly, Kim plays video games. Her mom plays World of Warcraft. Her dad just finished Grand Theft Auto 5 everything in the game. Her brother plays video games. Her sister is fucking playing Destiny. Finished like everything in the game. Like I'm talking everything. And her entire family's a gaming family. Mine wasn't. I was the only gamer out of my family. You know? So yeah, the video gaming world. I love it. But I was just like, I was so fucking annoyed. I was like, wow. And me and Kim ran into her, this girl, a couple of years ago. We were at some like outdoor party on the like for like a big street party thing for like our city, and we ran into this girl, and I was like, well, if it isn't you. And she came up, she's like, and she's my age, so she sees my like, she's like, oh, hey, how you doing, John? I said, oh, good. I said, here's my wife. She's like, you're married? And I said, yeah. I said this is Kim. She's like, oh my god. She's like super hot, like, oh my god. I was just like, yeah, it's called the video gaming world, asshole. You fucking piece of shit.
Like, I plucked her straight from the video gaming world,
yeah,
and brought her into the real world. So I guess that's how things go in the gaming world.
And well, this girl's the same age as me now, so it's like this girl's 41, she was my age, and I'm just like, yeah, and you're in Cougarville world now, motherfucker. Isn't what goes around comes around, bitch.
And you know what? It is kind of bittersweet, though, to think that now we live in a day and age where this is commonplace. And for all the people out there that tried to take a shit on it, most of them are now jumping on the bandwagon because now it's considered, to be normal.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I guess it's okay because other people deemed it acceptable, so now I can't be insecure about it and try to go enforce my opinion like the fucking douche nozzle I am.
Yeah.
And all of them talk like that, by the way, with the same exact tone.
Well, they
voice.
do, just like that. Jesus.
Looking down their nose at everybody who's stuck in the video gaming world.
I'm trying to think if is there any other memorable women that you dated or saw that were either into it or against it? Anything that comes to mind?
I mean, a lot of the chicks that I dated were always open to the idea of games. I did date one who didn't like game. It was weird. She loved to hate things. Mm-hmm. That was
shit.
That was oddly one of the reasons why I was attracted to her. She hated so many things. I was like, man, that is fucking hot. I need to put away this fucking rage boner I have at the moment. But she hated a lot of the same things that I did, and it's always interesting that you find solace in mutual hatred with some people, and that was kind of how that relationship started. But and oddly, our relationship got started from comic books of all things. And then with gaming, she wasn't into playing video games because if she was not good at it within the first 5 seconds, she fucking detested it. And if she was good at it, she would keep on playing it. But the minute that it would challenge her, she'd be like, you know what? Fuck this game. And, basically would want to take a fucking crap on it and crack it in half or something like that. And it was strange. But anytime I'd be like, hey, want to go and play this? She'd be like, no, I fucking suck at that game. I already told you I fucking hate it. And it would just be just like that. And I mean, she was easily one of the hottest chicks I ever dated. So, I'm sitting there all starry-eyed, be like, man, you're so hot, even when you're taking a big double dump on the stuff I love.
A double dump.
Dude, it was fucking funny. It was one of the only times I'd ever encountered that because, I mean, I never encountered any of the type of chicks I would say, oh man, that's gaming. That's what for those fucking virgin basement dwelling losers that live with their fucking parents. That's what the games are for, the video gaming world. I never had to come across those fucking uptight, stick in the ass motherfuckers who are dragging the stick around and drawing fucking crop circles like they're goddamn aliens out in the fucking country or some shit. Never dealt with that, thankfully, because if I did, I'd be like, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck you and everything about you. Gaming's actually cool. I like this shit. You don't have to like it. You're a fucking turd burglar. I hope you get power bombed into traffic. Fuck off.
Yeah, it's funny, but I for myself so it was at 88, and I was hanging out with Rob's brother and a bunch of we're talking genuinely nerdy people. And I don't mean
just like people who are into geeky shit, but the actual quintessential prime example of a fucking loser.
Yeah, quite literally. Like we were hanging out with a lot of people that were very, they were the more nerdy end of the hobby. You know, going, you can't do that to a black dragon at level 2. And I just kind of, I was dating the girls that were like, duh. And I was like, kind of looking at my life going, well, I can continue on here and I can continue to date these stupid women that I am. The kind of class of women I was there. And I'm not meeting that many women because I was hanging out with a really cool group of guys. I don't mean it in a bad way. I liked everybody, but it wasn't helping me date people. And quite literally at 14 years old, I wanted to date as many people as humanly possible. That's all I cared about.
Hormones.
Pretty much, isn't it? Right. So I kind of in grade 8, I went with an entirely different class of people, and I didn't do it on purpose. It just naturally happened. I was skateboarding back then in 87 and 88. During the old Tony Hawk days and Power Peralta and all those days. And I was really getting into skateboarding, and the group of people I was hanging out with, they were all skateboarding, and I just got into a totally different class of people. And I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. I think it was a great thing, but boy, did I ever get into the bad side of life on that side of it. I became a pretty bad kid. In a lot of ways, I really did a lot of bad stuff back then. Stuff I've never talked about. Stuff I don't think I'd ever talk about. The thing is,
despite the fact that you did bad things, that's what helped molded you into the person that you are right now. Because without those experiences, you would be completely different.
Well, I kind of think so. Like I look at the old crowd that I used to hang out with, and they were all very straight-laced and very, by the book. I did this and I did this, and I had some rebellion to do. I had some really crazy shit to get off my chest. I had to do a lot of crazy things for a bunch of years, and I did. And I fucking partied hard. I partied really hard for a bunch of years, and I'm not talking meaning doing drugs or anything like that. There's a bunch of stuff like that, obviously back then, but it was just like I hung out with a really. If I said some of the stories, I hung out with a bunch of really evil people, and they really made me tough because every day, all we would do is insult each other. And I mean, after a while, you get the strongest skin ever. We would call each other every name under the book and all that, and it made me pretty tough. And but what it did for me too is that it made me meet a whole different class of women I would have never met otherwise. And you're right. All those decisions, but grade 8 was a big fork in the road and a big change in my entire life. Here's where I went. I could have gone right or left, and I went left.
Dude, I think it's fucking neat that both you and me, I mean, we already have a shitload in common, but that was actually a big turning point for me was in 8th grade.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's like you're now just finishing middle school, going on into high school, and that's when you're technically starting to hit like that maturity level, and you're changing and becoming like an actual person.
Well, I think I've often said that I think 14 is the most important year. 13, 14 is the most important year of your life. And people are like, why the fuck is that the case? I spent a lot of time thinking about it because I remember 13, 14 was when I knew who I was and what I liked. I knew that I liked D&D. I knew I liked video games. I knew I loved comic books. I knew I was into all these things. And those things have never changed. And I've noticed all my other friends that were that age, their core values have never changed. I think it's like, you're right. It's when you're like, this is who I am. And you don't know fully who you are, but the foundation is there for the first time. Before then, you're just kind of like a coddled child by your parents. And you're like, oh, I like this, I like this. But this is kind of like, no, I like these things on my own because I like them. It's kind of, I don't know, it is an important age for sure. Yeah.
Well, there's something, it's interesting to bring up is you were talking about getting in with a completely different crowd.
Yeah.
And getting in with that completely different crowd that's on the opposite spectrum of who you were hanging out with initially. Whenever you start blending both of those worlds together, because that had happened with me in many different instances, because I lived in a really bad area, and there was lots of times that these people who were kind of hard as nails type folks were coming down to be excited and geek out with me over RPGs. Yet if you saw them, you knew for a fact that they were a fucking criminal because they were.
Yeah.
And it's just odd though because you take like both of those things and put them together, and anybody can truly just kind of open up and be like, you know what? I don't need to be this fucking hardened badass all the time. I can actually be a fucking nerd and just openly embrace all this shit. That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
And when you see those kind of people get into it, it starts to send a different message to everybody else. And then you start meeting new types of women. And from meeting those new types of women can be like, hey, just so you know, all these other motherfuckers are saying this shit's cool. So there you go.
I got to ask you, because you've mentioned it a few times, and I want to really see the big picture of it all. You said that you grew up in a really bad neighborhood, like really bad. Can you paint what that was like? Can you tell me what it was like? Tell me like the shit that was going down there.
It's the north side of Pittsburgh. So if anybody who's listening to this is Pittsburgh native, then you already know what the hell I'm talking about. I mean, there are other bad parts of Pittsburgh, but Northside's one of the more infamous ones because it's so close to downtown.
Mm-hmm.
But Northside, where I had grown up at, like, it was a very easy thing to have you get the shit kicked out of you while walking down a street. You hearing a gunshot once a week was normal. Hearing about break-ins, cars being stolen, like. All the criminal activity that you can imagine being committed would happen in the entirety of that. Crack houses, yes, I've actually walked past them. You know, there was times that I'd seen people jumped. I'd been part of troublemaking myself. You know, I'd done just like you. I'd done some pretty bad things whenever I was younger, and that was just because I wanted to do bad things. I want to rebel against the system. Fuck everything. Fuck the rules. I didn't want to be courted into whatever bubble that society wanted me to be into. That's what I was as a teenager, and it was ridiculous. Now that I get to look at it in retrospect, but it helped make me into who I am now because I had firsthand experience. But it's I don't know. It was one of those things that when you grow up in an environment like that, it gives you a better perspective on life.
Oh yeah.
Because I lived in Hazelwood, I lived in Northside, I'd hung out in tons of other bad areas, but if it wasn't for those life experiences, I wouldn't have met the people that I'd met. I wouldn't have become as tough as I've become. And that's not like, oh man, trying to brag. It's like, no, I've dealt with shit that normal people don't deal with. Yeah. And because of that allowed me to become tougher and shit. But that's essentially where the fuck I grew up at. You know, the poor middle class Irish American family growing up in the bad neighborhood.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting to grow up in that environment because it's fascinating. I grew up in a really beautiful neighborhood, you know, with green trees, and you'd wake up to birds singing every morning. It's the opposite ends of the spectrum. It's fascinating. I grew up on a road called Sunshine Drive. I shit you not.
Dude, that sounds like the happiest shit for the fucking Care Bears to go and live in. Like ever. Fucking everybody's just putting out pies to cool on the windowsill. Rainbows are shooting out of everybody's mouths because they can't contain their goodness.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I grew up in a very nice neighborhood, and I was really lucky that way. And you know, I really, in retrospect, I look at it now, and I became a very rebellious teenager, and that's because I was a teenager. But if I could go back in time, I wish I wasn't such a shit. And you know what I mean? Because I got given everything to grow up super nice, and I was an asshole. I was an asshole for years, up till I was about 20 years old, and I there was a point in my life when I was going to the bar. And I don't see, the audiences don't understand this. I've never talked about this, where I was going out and I was fighting every weekend, like fist fighting. And I loved it. I know nobody even knows that about me. Rob knows that. Some of my other friends know that, but I was getting off on it and I was looking for it. And after a while, it just got so out of control that me and one of my friends, not my friend Andrew, who's been on the show, another friend of mine, Andrew, who I skateboarded with, he was a pretty big guy. We nearly fought an entire house of people. It was crazy. And I left, and I remember I came home that night, and I came home to the house, and I went up, and my parents just laid in bed reading, and I came into their bedroom, and I said, I got to get the fuck out of here. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I'm in a very bad state of mind, and I need to kind of break this routine. I need to like get out of here. I need to get away from all the people that I'm hanging out with and stuff like that. And my parents were quite, well, okay. And they're like, well, why don't you go stay with your grandmother in England for a while? Why don't you go and enjoy England? Because I'm a British citizen. I could go and do that. And so I said, that's a great idea. And so I booked a one-way flight, and I went to England. And I went, and you know what? That was the best thing I ever did in my entire life, because I went to England and I stayed with my grandmother over there. I stayed with her for like 5 or 6 months because I wanted to. And I was brought really down to earth about what was important in life again. Art was important. I'd forgotten that I was even into video games. I was becoming such a drinker and a fighter and a maniac that I'd forgotten who I was. And going to England really brought me back to everything that was important.
And there's one thing to say about that, and that's getting away from the problem and getting perspective helps a whole bunch. And, granted, the main focus of this whole thing is like gaming and relationships, but that's something else to take into account, is that when you're in a bad mental state, emotional state, there's no way that you can actually be of use to another person at all. You can't love somebody as much as they're going to need loved if you're just a fucking mess as a person, and they shouldn't have to go and clean you up. You have to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah. And I tell you, I came back from England, and I was like, I'm not a religious person at all, but I was a reborn person. I came back, and I quit drinking. I quit doing anything stupid. This is when I was 21, and I never looked back. And I got back into art. I got back into video games. I got into anime. But do you know what I did? I'm like, holy shit, I forgot how much I love this stuff. I'm really going to get into this. I'm not kind of going to get into it. I'm going full crazy, insane into video games and anime. This is the thing I love, and this is what my life is going to be about. And from then on, that's what it's been about. And I never looked back, and I never went back to my old ways, and I completely cleaned up as a person.
Dude, and you know what? That's actually a fucking awesome story to hear, because there's tons of people right now that could be listening that might be dealing with some shit and can find a way to kind of just disconnect from everything, look at everything in life that really matters, and then throw themselves into all the positive things, like their hobbies and all their interests and shit. And gaming is one of those things, big time.
So it's gaming is a very wonderful thing. I didn't mean to get off topic from gaming.
Oh no, that's all right. I actually liked where it segued off to. And the thing is, there's a lot of connections I could still make to gaming and relationships to everything that you're bringing up. That's why I kind of liked hearing about it.
I think that's one thing I like about doing the podcast, is that I can talk about things that I've never talked about on the show, nor could I ever bring up on the show. On the show,
it's also hard to make like an episode like, all right, I'm going to talk to everybody who's normally just here to talk about video games and listen about them and stuff. Yeah. I'm going to talk about how fucked up I was as a teenager. You ready?
Well, exactly. I always feel that the show is a certain side of myself, and it's a side that I want to bring forth for positivity, for video games and all that. And I really like that. But it's like, man, sometimes I always feel that people really have no idea what I used to be like and all that, and where I kind of came from as a person. They just think I'm some super happy, nice guy, and I am. I definitely am. But man, I've seen some crazy stuff in my time. I've seen some crazy stuff, man.
I think that's a good thing though, and most people would say, oh no, you should never experience that stuff. But there's a certain mindset that you will have going forward in life that you'll never get unless you had firsthand experience.
Yeah, life is all. You're right. Life is all about, from dating women to experiencing this or that. It's all about experiences. That's all it's about. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, like, it shapes you, makes you who you are.
You know
right
what?
about
That's
that.
I'm glad that you said that because that's something else. The relationships that you have, like all the past ones, can kind of help mold how you are as a person currently. You get to learn a lot of ups and downs. You get to learn more about yourself, especially because it's kind of crazy. You think that you know yourself really well until you get into a relationship, let alone sharing things that you've loved your entire life, like gaming with another person, and going from relationship to relationship, girl to girl.
Yeah.
You get to see that difference all the time, and that's always been something I look back. I mean, I'm the happiest I've ever been because I have stability
Yeah.
in my current relationship, and she is a big time gamer, but even if she wasn't, it wouldn't matter because I would only want to be with somebody who accepts the fact that yes, I do love this stuff. Yes, I have an entire room filled with games. No, I wouldn't get rid of them just to be in a relationship with somebody unless it was Kat Dennings. I'd sell all this in a fucking heartbeat if it was Kat Dennings. She'd be like, chop off an arm. I'd be like, pick which one.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even matter. But it's, don't ever sell out who you are just for the sake of a relationship. Even the most desperate out there is somebody for you.
Okay. The one thing that of the piece of advice I can give to anybody other, like, oh, I don't think I'll ever meet that person. Let me tell you something. All the people that like, I get a lot of friends that I always was kind of like, geez, I wonder if they're going to meet somebody. And even they're going, I don't think I'm ever going to meet anybody. And years goes by and they get a lot older. I'll tell you, there's somebody for everybody. There really is. I'm telling you, all of the people I grew up with, and I know a lot of people, and all of those people are with somebody now, and all those people are happy now. It'll happen. If it's not when you're 18, it's not when you're 22. It'll be when you're 30 or when you're 40. Don't worry about it. There's no fucking rush. That's the thing. Don't rush into a relationship. Sorry, go on.
Exactly. Oh no, if people just focus
Yeah.
on, oh man, I can't be alone. I have to find somebody. Oh man, I got to make this work. That's when everything goes to shit. You need to be concerned with making yourself happy, and it shouldn't be just at the expense of being with somebody else. No, you need to be happy with you before you can make somebody else happy.
Quite. It's so funny the things that you say is they're exactly my values too. What I have always said is that you need to be a complete circle for yourself. You know what I mean? You can't be a half circle looking for another half circle to complete you. To complete the ring, you need to be your own complete person before you meet somebody else. They're not going to do it for you either. They're not going to fulfill you. You need to be fulfilled yourself.
And there's one thing, like this is actually kind of a reverse momentum to everything else, is that while a lot of times you want to find somebody that is going to accept who you are and any of your interests and hobbies, how important that they are to you. But always remember this: do not ever choose your hobby over that person you care about.
Oh, definitely.
Like, because there's people I've met tons of times and they said, well, if they don't like it, they can fuck off. That's horrible to think. Because if you are with somebody and you love them and care about them, you don't suddenly just decide that your hobby is all that's important. And now this person that you supposedly love, air quotes will be used, supposedly love, and you're not going to give them the time of day. Those games aren't going anywhere. That living person is way more important than they always will be. And that's something that's, I guess, also important to discuss is time management. Make sure you make the time for all the people in your family, your friends, your love, and obviously for all your hobbies.
Yeah. I think that's the best thing. Like, Kim comes before any video game or anime or anything like that, but the great thing is there's a great balance there. So there's never anything out of control or out of sync. Everything's the way it's supposed to be.
And like having a balance can be a trying task because holy fuck, man. My best friend right now is engaged, is going to school full time, is a dad.
Oh my God.
And is trying to, game all at the same time, all the while still watches TV shows, still have a social life with, me and Sean, because we're essentially just a fucking little Triforce right there. But, that's all the stuff that he's doing. But it's a balancing act that you eventually just need to practice.
Yeah. That's tough. That's a lot of shit to take on.
It is. And you know what? If you support your significant other and they support you, trust me, the shit gets way fucking easier. And that's the thing. If they for example, I don't give a fuck about sports whatsoever. But if my girlfriend was like, hey, I'm really big into hockey. Well, hockey's awesome. So I'd be like, hey, that's awesome. Because, that's like the best fucking sport according to my brain. And I'd be like, hey, that's cool. I'm not really big into it, but I'll sit down and watch a game with you. Or if you want to go and talk about how angry you are about the other team, I'll totally fucking listen. And that it's always a two-way street, especially with the hobbies, man.
It's so true. Like, Kim said to me, hey, like there's this band coming to town. Like, I know you don't know them, but do you want to go see with me? Do you know my first answer is, yeah. I don't even know who the fuck they are, but I know if that makes her happy, then that's part of our relationship. Or she said to me,
you get to share it.
Yeah, she said to me the other day, she's like a big fan of Anne Rice and the vampire novels, and she's like, Anne Rice has a party every year down in New Orleans. It's like this big, like vampire-esque, party, and it's really, really cool. She's like, I'd love to go do something like that. I'm like, yeah, like I'd go with you for that. And I'm not into vampires or like into anything like, you know what I mean? It's not like my big thing, but if she enjoys it, then hey, I want to be there to support for sure.
No, that's very fucking good. And these are things like me and Johnny have been around the block. And that was one of the things that we've talked about on numerous different occasions, even prior to the recording of this podcast. And we thought that this stuff would be kind of interesting to bring up because there's a lot of people who ask, well, how do I meet a gamer chick? Well, stop right there and just worry about meeting a good person.
Yeah.
And if they're into games, that's fucking awesome. And maybe you could get them into games. That's what you should really think about. There's chicks who will want to meet a guy who only likes the specific games that they're into and the specific anime that they watch and anything less. If they aren't a super fan like them, then that guy's a piece of shit. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nobody should have to base their entire love life around the fictional works of somebody else because that means you're not truly in love with that person now.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah. So, man, that's a pretty good. I think we probably said everything we could say on that.
I think so.
I think it's pretty good. So, do we have okay, before we get into, did we figure out an ending for this podcast yet?
Nope. Our ending could be that we don't have an ending to the podcast and we just sit there and haphazardly try to fucking end it.
That's what it seems to be. That's why I'm bringing it up. It seems hilarious now.
Everybody who listens to the podcast will be like, there are how many episodes in and they still don't have a fucking ending?
No.
What the fuck? We are clearly professionals. From one half of the All-Gen Gamers to one half of the Hate Bit podcast, and I've been around the block doing this shit for a long time and still don't know how to fucking end a show.
No. Well, you even know that to end a show, it takes a certain little thing. You have your saying, I have mine, and it just kind of ends it nicely. It's a nice little boom. It's done and it's over. But for us, because we're two guys trying to go, okay, what should we do? Well, fucking Jesus, I don't know. Fuck, you want to do that? I don't know. Fuck. I'm so indecisive about it. I'm indecisive. I've never been more indecisive about anything than I am the end of the show.
Well, it's one of those things like it's like a credit crawl. You want to go and nail it. Like see, my ending to my videos, I just said in a video at random because I didn't know how to end it, and I was like, I'm just gonna stick with that because that seems better than just like cutting the video. and yours works out just fine because it's short, simple, to the fucking point.
Yeah, no pun intended. Yeah. I don't even know where it started from, that ending. I just remember I found the episode where I did it. I'm just like, until next time, guys. And I'm like, oh, and then the next time I did that again, and I was like, oh, that kind of worked. I'll stick with that. And then I did.
See, and it worked. And for us, unfortunately, we don't know what that thing is.
The Lord of Thunder. Oh, I'm trying to think of something. No, there's nothing.
The Lords of Thunder, he's done.
It's done. There's no more lords of thunder. It's over.
Yeah, it's over. And then it has to have like an echo effect. Over.
And then a boom. Lightning hits. So guys,
strikes again. That's a good song, by the way.
It's not quite over. There was another lightning strike. Okay, guys, I think that's going to be it. We're out of here. See ya.
All right, bye.
Bye.